All right, so during the Celtics and Milwaukee series, I defended Paul Pierce because usually when it comes to Celtic topics, Paul Pierce is on the money. And there are a lot of times when he's right. But I don't know, I saw this video. Actually, let me highlight the guy's name. The NBA in minutes. All right, I saw this video. I was looking at the video to defend Paul, but yeah, Paul has said some pretty wild shit, and I'm just gonna get into it, man, and I'm just gonna say my piece here and there.
Fine, back to Paul. Who's the best wing shooter of all time?
The best wing shooter of all time?
The best wing shooter of all time. Now, when I think of a wing, is a player that sits out on a wing, like a shooting guard or a small forward, who sits out there, wait for the point guard to get them the ball. All right? And in my opinion, the best wing shooter I've ever seen has to be Kevin Durant. Or like a Tracy McGrady or a Klay Thompson, or I would say Ray Allen, but, you know, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to say Ray Allen. I'm not going to exclude him. He's one of the best. Or like a Reggie Miller. That probably would be my top five. Tracy McGrady, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, Ray Allen, Reggie Miller. But yeah, let's hear what he says.
Right now it's Ray Allen, but it will be Steph.
It will?
It will be Steph.
He's not a wing though.
Wait.
What is Steph?
He's a point guard.
He's a wing guy.
What?
What's happening?
Now, to defend Paul Pierce, I believe he's saying it because point guards today aren't traditional point guards unless you're looking at a Chris Paul. All right, most of them are pretty much combo guards who can shoot the ball, who can do other things. They can kind of transfer to the shooting guard position almost effortlessly. You know, like back in the day, Mark Jackson or John Stockton couldn't play the two because their skills were primarily built for the point guard position. But nowadays, point guards are so versatile, they can play shit. Sometimes point guards can play small forward, depending on how tall they are. And yeah, so. And I could be wrong about this, but I believe, like, it was on a game, but I believe they had LeBron James as a point guard his rookie year, which was funny to look back on.
He's a combo guard. That's not a point guard.
He's so over with,
He's a wing guy. But Ray Allen,
Steph Curry is not he's a wing guy?
Yeah.
What is a wing guy?
He just
I like it.
Point.
Wing guy is fun.
It's a combo.
Is a hybrid.
And then Klay.
Okay, so
Klay
right now it's Ray Allen.
And again, to defend Paul Pierce, Curry's not the I mean, he is the guy to ball handle for the team, but he's not the only ball handler. Sometimes you'll have KD, sometimes you'll have Draymond, and sometimes you'll see Klay just moving all around. But he moves all over the floor. He just doesn't sit at the wing, which back in that time, during that time, most small forwards and shooting guards would just sit at the wing, you know, waiting for the play to make the move, or, you know, to switch to a different spot or something. But sometimes you'll see Steph at the wing, you know, especially if he's waiting for a screen or something like that. You'll see him out there, but he's not. He's a point guard, man. Like, he could play shooting guard, but you primarily see Steph all over the floor or at the top of the key.
Then it's gonna be Steph.
Then it's gonna be Steph.
Then it's gonna be Klay. Oh, that's a weird chart. Okay.
Well, the numbers are gonna speak when it's all said and done.
Would you get this segment over?
I know, we got more.
And I don't want to make this a gender issue, man, but it's funny how a woman who's never played basketball probably a day in her life, seriously, can sit here and tell an NBA Hall of Famer, you know what, you're wrong. Even if he is wrong, I just think it's a little weird, man. Like, I don't have a problem with Chauncey sitting there telling him, like, what are you talking about? But for her to sit there and for her to act like Paul Pierce is like some ridiculous ass person for saying this shit because he don't know what he's talking about is completely ridiculous. Even though I see where Paul is coming from. Even though I still believe he's wrong, I still see where he's coming from and the point he's trying to make.
All right, at least we can agree. Peak, Heat, Big Three, or Celtics.
All right, before he goes in, the Heat versus the Celtics Big Three. If we're going longevity, I gotta go with the Heat. But if we're talking about effectiveness, I gotta go with the Boston Celtics. When the Boston Celtics Big Three was formed and they made all those deals, when Danny Ainge made all those deals to bring in KG and Ray Allen and bring all those different pieces in to build that championship team, they won immediately. It was the first time in NBA history that you've seen immediate successful results from something like that. Now the Heat almost was able to get the job done, but then they had probably one of the most embarrassing losses by a favorite in NBA history when they lost to the Dallas Mavericks the way they did. And LeBron had one of his worst playoff performances to date. I mean that just was so laughable the way that this dude played. And another argument to make for the Big Three Celtics over the Miami Heat is that LeBron left Cleveland because of them. Now, see, people say, "Oh, LeBron destroyed the Boston Celtics." No, LeBron left Miami and left Cleveland for Miami because he couldn't beat the Big Three in Boston. So really, he took the easy way out so he can get his titles, and he couldn't win it in Cleveland. And I'm not saying that he should have stayed in Cleveland. I'm not like, if he really wanted to leave, he could have left. But the one thing you never do is give somebody credit for taking the easy way out, because the way that they were originally doing it, the way it was done before, was so hard. And I don't give him credit for that. I mean, LeBron is an all-time great player, obviously, but you give him credit where his credit is due. You don't just give him credit because of his numbers and all this other shit that people tend to give him credit for. But I don't know. I think it's a tie. I think if Boston would have beat LA that second time, which they should have, but if they would have beat LA that second time, I think I would give it to Boston easy. But since Miami did win 2 championships together, I'm gonna say it's a tie, honestly.
Big.
Easy. This is. We was all in our prime versus them in their prime.
Oh, here we go.
What the fuck are you talking? No, Boston was not in their prime. All right, KG was on the latter part of his career. That 1 year in Boston, his first year in Boston was the last year where KG was just at somewhat of an all-star level. So was Ray Allen, and so was Paul Pierce. But the NBA didn't have anything like them in the league, so they were able to dominate that first year and win 60 games and go on to win the title. But no, you weren't in your prime. Miami was in their prime, and you were on the downslide.
They was sitting on no championships right now. If we was in against Pierce, LeBron.
Again, I've already said it. LeBron went to Miami because, well, no, there's a couple reasons. I heard something about Delonte West banging his mom or something like that. But that's another reason. But the main reason was because he couldn't beat the Big Three in Boston. Every time Cleveland would play Boston in the playoffs, they would lose in like 6 games. I believe there was a 7-game series as well, and they would just lose. And so he went to Miami, teamed up with Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade, and got his title run.
So I ask you, is Clay a better wing shooter than you?
Now, this is where I thought he was completely ridiculous, and I get it. A basketball player's pride is his game, and he'll defend it. And I thought he was completely ridiculous with what he said.
You were in
Yes.
your prime.
But you're asking Paul.
Is he a better
Wing shooter. It's okay. You can say yeah.
I'm gonna say no. This is why. In clutch situations.
Now, I've seen Klay Thompson play well in the clutch. I've seen Klay Thompson hit some big three-pointers. I've seen Klay Thompson play pretty well late in games. I don't know what Paul is saying. Now, Paul Pierce was a very good late game shooter. So I gotta give him credit for that. But, bro, I think Klay can do what Paul could, what Paul was able to do, Klay can do. I don't think Paul can do what Klay can do.
Why are you staring at me like that?
It was money in the bank. You haven't seen Klay in these situations quite a bit.
You want me to tell you this? You want me to tell you what it is?
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
mean, you got Klay. If you come up here in LA, you come up here in LA. Give me your starting five. Give me your starting five.
All right, I think right here that we're talking about the starting five players, all-time players. Who would you put on the team together? And if I had my starting five, it'd be Magic at the point guard. His size, he was able to shoot. I mean, not like on the level of Steph, but his size, his ability to defend all five positions on the floor, you got to put him number one. And Klay, Steph, he's just not a good shooter. I mean, damn, he's not a good defender. I don't know why I said shooter, sorry. But shooting guard is obviously Michael Jordan. You got to put him at the 2. I mean, for obvious reasons, don't even need to go into him. Now, at the 3, this may be controversial, and this has nothing to do with Boston loyalty, man, but Larry Bird was phenomenal. The only thing that LeBron has over Larry Bird, that would make me want to take LeBron is his elite athleticism. He also has phenomenal basketball intelligence. But Larry Bird also had phenomenal basketball intelligence. And Larry Bird had an ability and had a knack for making big plays at crucial times. And that was one of the knocks against LeBron his entire career, is his consistency late in games and crunch time, being able to get the job done. Now, I'm not saying LeBron was not a good clutch player. I'm just saying he wasn't as consistent as some people would have liked him to be. If you're going to compare yourself to Michael Jordan, if you're going to say that you're better than Larry Bird, if you're going to think that you have to be very good consistently in the clutch, there is no way you can just flame out. You'll have like 45 minutes of unbelievable basketball, and then in the last 3 minutes, you look like you don't know what the fuck you're doing out there. So,
Right here live on air.
oh shit, damn, I'm not even done. So I have Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird. Power forward, you gotta go with Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan is not a 5, he's a 4. I gotta go with Tim Duncan. His ability to lead a team and his ability to finish in the low post and his low post defense. I mean, he's the complete package at the power forward position. Everything you would want a power forward to do. Now at center, it's a toss-up. There's so many great centers in the history of the NBA. But if I had to pick, even though Jalen said, well, you didn't, he told Paul you didn't see him play. Doesn't matter. That doesn't change the impact that this dude had on the game. Bill Russell. He had one of the greatest basketball sayings I've ever heard in my life. The goal isn't to block every shot. The goal is to make the opponent think you're going to block every shot. And that's how you change those shots, which is a very true statement. I mean, this dude was the master of defense, master in the low post. I mean, he may not have been spectacular, but this dude was phenomenal. So, those are my 5. Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Tim Duncan, and Bill Russell.
On air, Magic Johnson.
Yes.
I'm going Michael Jordan. I'm going Kobe at the 3.
Why? Why? Why would you, bro? Kobe at the 3. Now, if he's taking Kobe at the 3, he must mean early 2000s Kobe, when Kobe had the afro and this nigga was jumping all over the goddamn court. That Kobe is good. It's really great. But, bro, over Larry Bird, even over LeBron, I mean, even in Kobe's greatest, I guess, even in Kobe's greatest years, I don't see him holding the torch really to fucking LeBron, man. I don't know. And I have yet to see Kobe win without Phil Jackson, Derek Fisher, and a decent big man. If he doesn't have those three things, he's not winning anything. I mean, he may make the playoffs, but he's not winning nothing. You've seen LeBron make it to the NBA Finals without a great coach. We've seen Larry Bird get his team to an NBA championship. Was it Larry Bird? No, I think it was Magic they got. Well, he won a championship within his first 2 seasons there in Boston. But he made Boston an instant contender immediately. And this was before all the Hall of Famers was riddled all over the team.
I'm going Russell at the 4. And then
You ain't even see Russell play.
Hey,
Get out.
listen, he got 11. Listen. It's about a balance. I need a balance. I need a balance in the lineup.
played against
I need a
TBD.
balance in the lineup.
I'm
Then
taking
my
Bill Russell.
my seniors career.
Hey, you take.
Both NBA Finals MVP. You have him in career points. He's got more playoff points. You are a more clutch shooter overall. He's
Look at Paul Pierce's face right here. This is the look of a man who's one, confused by what's happening right now, and he also has this look of, why these people always fucking with me? Like, why is everything all about who's better than me on the NBA basketball court? Like, like he looks so confused. Like, why? Why do they continue to do this shit to me? It's funny, man. Like, Paul is just funny.
more playoff points. Paul, riddle me this. Who's the better NBA player?
That's it.
Dwayne Wade. The last time I had a favorite player, Dwayne Wade was my favorite player. And this was before the Miami Heat Big Three, when Wade was doing every single thing on the court for the Miami Heat. I mean, this dude was scoring, he was rebounding, he was facilitating, he was, grabbing steals, he was blocking shots. I mean, I'm pretty sure his field goal percentage was pretty incredible. Like, this dude was just all over the floor. I mean, he was like a fucking Wolverine for real. Like, he was just all over the place. And he was one of my favorite players. But I wouldn't say that he outright had a better career than... Now, he won more championships. He had more immediate success. And I'm not taking any credit away from him for that. But Paul has been on teams with pretty bad management. Before they got Danny Ainge, and Danny Ainge was able to put a winning formula or winning ingredient on the floor, I mean, that team struggled for years to try to find consistency. And Paul was a victim of that. I mean, luckily for Dwayne Wade, he had Shaq early on in his career. He had LeBron, during his prime. There were times where Dwayne Wade had everything at his feet for him to succeed, and Paul didn't. And plus, it's a different era, so you can't really look at stats. Because Paul was a phenomenal scorer. He was also a really good defender. I mean, if I'm just going off of talent, and if I'm going off of circumstance, I gotta say it's a tie. There's no way I can just put Dwayne Wade over Paul Pierce definitively. Like, Paul Pierce wasn't privy to some of the advantages that Dwayne Wade has. But I don't know. I gotta give a slight edge to Dwayne Wade. But I'm not going to say Dwayne Wade completely eclipses Paul Pierce.
Easy, I can say that off the bat. That's me. If you give me Shaq, if you give me LeBron, he did on the Big Three.
Real shit. If you give Paul Pierce all of the advantages that Dwayne Wade had early on in his career, Paul Pierce might have been a champion. Who knows? But he didn't. And he wasn't privy to some of those advantages that... what's his name? Damn, Dwayne Wade was too. But I mean, nobody's perfect, man. I mean, I'm pretty sure if you ask T-Mac who's the greatest volume scorer in NBA history, he gonna say him. even though to me Tracy McGrady, although he was one of my favorite players to use in the video game, I mean, this dude was just fun to use. He was a fucking ball hog who did nothing but shoot and pretty much shoot his team out of the playoffs every fucking year. Like, it is what it is, man. I mean, sometimes you're a great talent. You just don't have some of the advantages that some of these other players have. That don't make you less than them. It just means that they were able to take advantage of those opportunities.
Yeah, we got that late, but like early in my career.
I mean, what are you doing right now?
If you give me these guys early in my career.
Well, let me ask you this. What would have been a perfect time for you, Paul? Let's make sure we get this right.
I was 24 years old.
Okay.
You give me Shaq.
He isn't here to defend his honor. I'm
No, I'm South of Dwayne Wade. Magnet.
No, it's my turn. My turn. Don't backtrack. He's made All NBA first team twice. Paul hasn't done it. He made All NBA 8 times to your 4. He's made All defensive team 3 times to your 0.
Ooh, 0. That's rough.
He's won 1 scoring title.
All right, but let's look at this. During Dwayne Wade's prime, how many shooting guards in the NBA were really competing with Dwayne Wade for best shooting guard in the NBA? Because if we look at Paul Pierce's career and we say, well, how many small forwards in the NBA were competing with Paul Pierce for best small forward? Now, with Dwayne Wade's shooting guards around his time, T-Mac, but I say T-Mac while wincing because T-Mac had injury issues. All right, T-Mac, couldn't stay healthy, but he wasn't better than Dwayne Wade. Ray Allen, but Ray Allen was on the downside of his career, so Ray Allen really wasn't going to be a great impact player on any team. I mean, he was a phenomenal shooter, late in games and stuff, but he wasn't going to fucking, he wasn't going to win any awards with the way he played. Damn. I believe AI was still playing, but AI, that was that stretch where AI was still considered a good player, but he wasn't really doing anything. I mean, AI's best years was the early 2000s. During Dwayne Wade's prime, it was the late 2000s, and that's when Allen Iverson was having all those issues. But you could also go Andre Iguodala, who was a shooting guard at that time, but he was never on Dwayne Wade's level. Now we go to Paul Pierce. We think about some of the small forwards. You got Kobe, and this was when Kobe was winning titles in LA. He was considered a small forward then because they had Eddie Jones at the 2. I believe Scottie Pippen was still playing. I'm not going to say Scottie Pippen was, better than Paul Pierce during that time, but Scottie Pippen was still playing at a relatively high level during his years in Portland, and I think before he retired, but I'm trying to think of some more people. Sorry, I'm trying to think of all this shit on the fly. None of this shit is rehearsed. I'm trying to think of all this shit on the fly. You know what? I'm gonna do a video about that. The players that Dwayne Wade had to play against versus the players that Paul Pierce had to play, because that's actually interesting. Like, Paul had more competition at his position during his time than Dwayne Wade did, and that's not taking anything away from Dwayne Wade, but you got to look at everything in its proper context. Otherwise, you just start coming up with all these wild ass assumptions that usually turn out to you being wrong.
Weren't able to win the scoring title.
That's too bad.
He has 3 rings. You have 1 ring.
Ooh, 3 is bigger than 1.
More
excited.
Because for some reason these women think that they can jump on TV and they can say anything they want, even though they have no experience in what it's like to compete at a man's level. But for some reason we're supposed to pretend they do. And this is my problem with watching these sports channels. This is why I don't watch them. This is why I watch them on YouTube, because I can just take a little sample size. I don't have to eat the whole thing. This is why I like watching them on YouTube, because these female moderators, man, and sometimes they are correct in what they're saying, but sometimes they're not, man. And sometimes they're saying things because they're assuming that's how it's supposed to be without having any real knowledge of what it's like. And I'm not saying I've played professional sports, man, but I've played a male competitive sport. And trust me, it's not what you think it is. If you've never done it, it's not what you think it is. And it's a lot harder than a lot of these women make it out to be. So I don't know, man. Like she's commenting on all this shit without having any real knowledge. Like Paul Pierce was the NBA player. Jalen Rose was the NBA player. Tracy McGrady, Chauncey Billups, they're NBA players. They understand. You don't. But you're talking and you're running shit like you do. This is why I like Speak for Yourself a lot. Because it's men and it's male athletes giving their opinion on a lot of things that I hold with a higher value than a woman who's never either played the sport or never experienced any competition at that level before, than their opinion. I mean, and I don't want to make this a gender issue. It's just, I don't know, it bothers me a little bit that she could sit on TV making fun of this dude who spent his career making millions playing basketball, and she has never done it, but she's on TV pretending she did, I guess.
Player this season, is it Luka Doncic or the Greek freak Chauncey?
Now, this was interesting, and this is where I stopped watching the video. But the most exciting player to me is Luka Doncic. If anybody has ever watched Luka Doncic play, he's one of those guys who just move around. He's kind of like Klay Thompson. He moves around in the background. You don't notice him too much. But before you know it, this dude's hanging 25 to 30 on your head, and you don't even know how the fuck he got 25 or 30. And he makes it look so swaggy the way he does it. Like, this dude has such style with the way he plays, and it's so effortless the way he plays. You can really tell. I mean, this dude was ready for the fucking NBA game, man. Now with Giannis is a phenomenally athletic guy, and he's very dominant with his length. But if you ask Giannis, hey, yo, Giannis, I need you to get me 5 to 6 3-pointers in this game, or I need you to dribble and ball handle for the majority of the game, or some shit like that. Like some shit like that, he wouldn't be able to do it. Giannis makes his money in the low post, and he makes his money with those athletic finishes around the rim. I mean, Luka in the next 5 years could be an All-NBA caliber player. And this is just my assumption because I've seen him play and I'm thoroughly impressed with the way his game is. And at the beginning of the year, before I just didn't see any more of him, Luka was my rookie of the year. But I believe Trey has already locked it up at this point.
I like Luka Doncic.
Can't even say his name, Jesus.
All right, there you go. I mean, he's exciting. I mean, he's a great passer. Crazy shots, I feel like, every night. I mean, this rookie, I've seen the Greek Freak last year. He's doing the same thing this year. And since you are the champion, we have this special trophy for you. Whoa! Yes!
Close up, please.
Yes!
Oh, no! All right. That was funny. I think the video is over, but yeah, man, that was Paul. And I'm not saying that he didn't make some pretty wild ass statements, but like I said, man, Paul he's a complicated guy. If you listen to what he says and at the moment you judge what he says based on how your brain received the information, you're going to think he's fucking crazy. Or you're going to think he's stupid with some of the stuff he says. But if you give it any level of thought, and I think, like the NBA players like Tracy McGrady, Chauncey Billups, and Jalen Rose, I think instead of them really listening or trying to pay attention to what he's saying, they like making fun of him. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I mean, it looks like they have a good time on the show. But it looks like they like making fun of him, because Paul just have these classic reactions to things he doesn't agree with, and he seems like the kind of guy. It's fun to just fuck with him all day because you're just gonna get these classic reactions. But there's a lot of what he said that has some layer of truth to it, and I'm not the biggest defender of Paul Pierce, but like. Like, I think this whole Ray Allen, not Ray Allen, this whole Ray Allen thing, where I was about to say Ray Rondo, this whole Ray Allen thing where they got mad at him for going to Miami and winning titles there, I think was childish, and I don't understand why they were so mad for so long. I mean, loyalty does not exist in sports. The only loyalty that exists in sports, well, loyalty to other people doesn't exist, but the only loyalty that really exists is loyalty to yourself. And LeBron, that's one thing I do give LeBron credit for, is a lot of credit for, is holding true to that statement. So, all right, that's it, man. I might come back later with something else. All right.